I'm Natasha Ryan with Premier Risk Solutions, and this is our video series, Strong, Safe, and True, where we sit down with leaders in the security industry and talk about things that are relevant to today's security sector. Today, we are talking about mailroom security with my friend Will Plummer from RaySecur. And Will, just give people a little perspective on your background for me.
Yeah, no problem. So Will Plummer, I'm the CSO for RaySecur, and my background's military. So I did 25 years in the bomb squad with the Army, and when I retired, I got picked up and brought the response side of how an explosive ordnance disposal person deals with life to corporate America, primarily, trying to help out and minimize risks.
Well, thanks for your service, and I want to hop right into our PowerPoint here because I've seen some interesting articles on the state of mailrooms and the threats that they're seeing. And there is an uptick, which, I'm sure you're going to be the expert on, not me, but there is an uptick on white powder incidents. So your company was kind enough to supply this next slide. 42% of the threats are white powder in a mailroom. Is that correct?
Well, not just a mailroom. So this isn't just suspect packages that were placed in the front lobby of, say, a corporate business or something. This is of legitimate responded to suspect packages or threats that were put through the mail. Yeah, 42% contain white or other powders. That's a mixture of drugs and people trying to cause shutdowns and people trying to cause legitimate pain on people that open up the mail on the other end of it.
And when that white powder comes and you see threats come through the mail, 95% are very small packages. Why is that?
Chain of custody is the reason why. So you can take anything that's less than 10 ounces and less than half an inch thick, put a stamp on it, and the United States Postal Service will deliver it. There's no reason to stand in front of a counter or present your ID card or your credit card. It's going to get delivered. You end up with small packages and letters that nobody ever screens until it gets to the point where somebody wants to target somebody.
And if you don't properly screen those, that's where we get into a lot of trouble. So, has the questions that a company might want to ask themselves, right, is, has your company had an issue? And what do you hear when you tell companies that you need to ask yourself that?
It's actually kind of funny. We have conversations all the time, and you'll usually hear somebody say, "Oh, we don't have a problem," and then the next sentence will be, "Well, we did have that gun we found in the mail," and the next sentence will be, "We did have those drugs, and I had to have, the local police department's sheriffs come by, or we had those threats the FBI had to show up for," and people just don't realize that you connect all those together. You have a legitimate mail concern in your company.
Why do you think there's that lack of recognizing that as a legitimate problem, especially if it's happened more than once?
I think it has the connotation of what people see mail as. I mean, it shows up at your home. It shows up at the office. It's something we've lived with our entire lives. So it's something that doesn't necessarily raise everybody's concern level because it's just mail. And unfortunately, that's the reason why so much of it gets delivered, is people don't necessarily weight it properly when they're doing their risk assessments.
And, when things do happen, coming from an ex-news person, I mean, that can be a PR nightmare. I mean, do you talk about that with companies?
That's what most of the companies have on the forefront of their mind when they call us. Either something has happened and we start talking about things that is a good example. Last year, Subway's headquarters got hit. They had a white powder threat fairly early on in the pandemic, and they did everything right. Their corporate staff, they responded as you'd expect them to do it. They took care of their people. They had minimal people on site. All the things that really work in their screening worked. It hit the local news cycle. Everybody was nice, no big deal. It hit the international or the national level news cycle, and they start dragging up all the last 10 years of problems that Subway's had, and they blame the corporate headquarters. They said corporate's the reason this happened because they laid somebody off. That's 100% the reason why half these companies call, because it goes straight to PR and it goes straight to their stock and straight to their board members.
So to kind of be on a proactive side, right, is always the most important, not reactive. What are some of the signs that you tell folks to look for in a mailroom?
So everybody's seen the poster 84 sign. It's got oil stains, wires coming out of it, misspellings, excess postage. There's all those that are normal, but what really is helping out recently is, look, we just went through a major pandemic, right? I mean, we haven't seen this since 1918. Layoffs across the board. A lot of the threats that are showing up now, they're insiders. Somebody was laid off 6 months ago. They don't have any savings anymore. They're frustrated. They're angry. They don't have a way to reach out. They think sending something to the mail anonymously is a safe way for them to do it. It provides standoff and it provides them the ability to feel a little bit better, right? Well, that means that those threats, when they show up, they are probably going to be labeled correctly. They're probably have the right amount of postage and have the right, I want director of HR to get this. They're probably going to spell that individual's name and duty position correctly. So nowadays, you need to not just do what Poster 84 says, but you also need to take a deep look at who's coming and going and who you think might be a problem. You just laid off 200 people because you had to. Let's put those 200 people on a watch list for us internally. You know that a department just reached out and ended up in a lawsuit. Hey, that department's gonna need some extra attention for the next however long until it leaves. So a lot of it has got to do with self-assessing your organization and identifying who's looking at you and what lens do they see you through, if that makes sense.
It does. And then what about scanning equipment?
Well, a lot of companies are looking to figure out how to best do that. We as a company, as our mantra, as we lean into human beings. So training is important. Screening equipment, that's one of our mainstays. That's what we do, is we sell screening equipment. But a lot of it has to do with making sure that people are empowered to make decisions. People are empowered and they know what things look right when they're right and what they look like when they're wrong, and that they're aware of those 200 people so that you can use human beings as a sensor and kind of figure stuff out. We lean into intuition and to people's gut feeling as well.
And then also one of the things we talked about, in a previous phone call is just really verifying that chain of custody, kind of like you would at home when someone pulls up and throws a package on your doorstep, right?
There's two kind of interesting aspects to this. The first one is, what normal is. Your gut instinct's going to lean into it. You also know who's normally running around and who's your normal delivery person. It's called like basically a hardened target. So if somebody's going to target me, but they know that I have a fully functional, relevant screening program in place, they might think twice before they do it. So making sure you have a hardened target is one. The second one is making sure that you're aware of what goes in and what goes out. Every day nowadays, you can actually turn on all your mail to where the Postal Service will send you an email and shows you the picture of everything. There's processes you can put in place. Yeah. My wife knew I had jury duty before I did, and she was laughing at me. I don't personally track it, but my wife knows what comes and goes. Mm-hmm. I've seen companies that are so forward leaning that they know exactly what's showing up on every day at every dock they have. And it's a logistical function. If you take your mail processes and you turn them into a logistical function within your organization and you apply what you know when you're receiving pallets to when you're receiving little pieces of letter mail, you're going to increase your security.
What about, the last talking point on this slide I'm interested in? Should companies be allowing employees to have personal deliveries?
That is a very good question. And honestly, about 50-50 is what we see across most of our clients and the people we talk to. If you allow personal mail to come to the office, people stay at work longer. They are happier because, I can order stuff off of my porch pirates, taking my Amazon items that I just purchased for my kids. If you work for companies that have a high turnover rate, it's another reason to stay. However, you're taking on that pain onto your company. You're now having to accept the fact that personal items are going to be handled by other employees of your company. Through the pandemic, we saw a huge push to working from the home. And a lot of people changed their life. That's great. You also saw, unfortunately, drug dealers not standing on street corners anymore. Now those drug dealers are using the mail. So if you have 7,000 employees, are all 7,000 completely above board in everything they do? Probably not. Their spouse probably knows they're doing something illegitimate and probably is aware of their history of what they've done. So what are they going to do? They're going to move it to the office. So yes, your employees are happier. It does make sense. You are adding to logistics, but you're also now opening a facet of what you have to control, what you allow in and out.
Yeah. I can't imagine sending drugs to my employer's place, but you know.
You'd be surprised. We have a couple clients who have done and had to deal with some significant internal mail, it moving from one employee to another. And, you've got large companies that have been drug traffickers. It's just the reality.
Okay, so let's talk training.
Yes.
So, let's go down some of these points here. Screeners and task-specific functions and requirements. What are some of those?
So the screeners are the people that are going to interact with the actual threat. So you don't want people that are screeners having freedom of thought. And that's not to say that they shouldn't have it. That's to say we want to know what their next step is every time. So that when the first responders come in, we can brief them and say, we've done this, this, and this. And the screeners follow those task-specific functions. It's just the reality that somebody has to do the machine and the mechanical tasks. So that's what that means.
Okay, and then facility and logistical implementation of multiple teams. So you need multiple teams that have different functions to cohesively, thwart these threats, right?
Right. Usually what we see inside of most of the people we work with is, so security's got the tasks. I'll talk about them in a second, but facilities is where most of the work happens, because facilities runs the mailroom. Well, they also run the shipping department, which is not necessarily always the mailroom. They also run the safety side of like OSHA, not risks to walk to the front door, but day-to-day tasks. So they're the ones that are going to maintain the eye wash stations. They're the ones that are going to maintain any PPE that needs to be provided. So by the time you get done, that's several different teams within the facilities or the logistical aspect that have to have some input in making sure that the entire task is completed safely, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, yes. So talk a little bit about a resource you guys want people to be able to get a hold of.
So one thing that we talked about it earlier, Natasha, is that mail just tends to not necessarily be high on a lot of people's priorities. So when I stepped out of uniform and stepped into this company, I started looking for ways to get data, because data will drive decisions. And if you can have an accurate data set, you can find out all sorts of stuff about future tasks or requirements. Well, I found out there was no real data. So what we did, much like the START Database Center, they collect open source information on terrorist events, is we started collecting open source information about mail threats and mail events. This current report that we did for 2020 lays across the United States. The one for 2021 will have trends for international at the same level. But basically what it does is it lays out what happened over the year. It allows you to plan for what types of threats showed up, statistically speaking, the most, who showed up to respond to them. So an example earlier, we showed you the breakdown of hazmat versus EOD or bomb squad response.
Right.
27% is hazmat. You might want to put some PPE out for your screeners, because the probability is fairly high that those people are going to run into something. So just a data set for people to use.
And we love having resources like this. The reason we do this series at PRS believes in education and giving anything to help make everyone more safe, secure. Our personal services include special events, consulting, private investigative, digital forensics, security. If you need anything, my email is natasha@premierrisksolutions.com. I want to thank Will for joining me. This is very interesting information. I appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for watching, and be sure to come back to premierrisksolutions.com, our website, for more video entries just like this one. Thanks, everyone.